Otro video para ti hoy. Este es Ron con enetcomputers.com. Check disk. I wanted to make this video showing you how to use check disk on Windows 7. Check disk is a very, I would say, powerful tool, an excellent tool that you should be using as part of your PC maintenance. There are no excuses. Ignorance is only bliss until your computer ends up in a computer repair shop, and then you have to spend hundreds of dollars. But generally that's with data backup. If people backed up their data, there wouldn't be an economy for businesses that recover data. But that's another video. So Windows 7 check disk. You can check out my blog post that's in this video description at my website enetcomputers.com if you prefer text or if you prefer written instructions in the abstract. I went over all of it. I show you what command to use, all the details. So I'm going to transition into my Windows 7 machine, and I'm going to show you how to run a check disk in Windows 7. At least kick it off. As I look, there it is. Here's Windows 7. So hit the start button. In the search programs and files, type in CMD for command prompt. Then as you notice up here under programs, there's a little icon. Right click it, select run as administrator, say yes, and I might need to change the font here so you can read this easier. 8 by 12, how about 12 by 16? There we go. That should be better for you. I can even maximize that to a certain extent, I think, or I could even make it bigger. Let me try really quick. One more time. 10, well, that's about as big as it's gonna get. Alright, 12, well, 16 by 8 is gonna look weird. We'll just leave that. At this command prompt, see Windows System 32. Now you can run this command not just on Windows 7. You can run this command on Windows XP, Vista, 7, 8, and 10. It's basically the same command. It might be a little bit different way that you have to get to command prompt, but as long as you get to a command prompt with administrative rights, it's the same command. Doesn't matter if it's Windows XP, Vista 7, 8, 10. Okay, now if you just type in check disk with nothing, it's gonna scan it. It's in read only. It even tells you, warning, F parameter not specified, running check disk in read only mode. This only has 3 passes when you just run check disk without any variables or options, because it's in read only. Check disk needs write access to your file system. Windows, when it boots, it mounts the file system so that it can write to it, or that you can write to it as a user. Oh, so it's done. It didn't find any. It says right here, Windows has checked the file system and found no problems. You can go ahead and kick it off. I just, as part of my routine maintenance, as even a computer repair technician, I try to run check disk every few months, especially like, let's say, after a power outage. In my office, this building had a power outage about, I would say, 2 weeks ago. Or let's say one of the Windows security updates got fucked up, like especially with Windows 10, and it fucks up your Windows computer. You might want to run a check disk then, or just as part of your regular maintenance. Run an antivirus scan once in a while. Run a anti-malware scan once in a while. Run a anti-spyware scan once in a while. So as part of your routine maintenance, you might want to run a check disk scan. It didn't find any problems. It tells you the total disk space, how many kilobytes, how many files there are on your computer. Now, depending on how large your hard disk is, how much data you have, how many files you have, this scan, when you kick it off for real, can take hours. So I would set aside at least an hour or two if you do perform a check disk. Now, in order to kick it off, you're going to type this command. Now, you can either do check disk. Let's see, I included it in my blog post. I gave you some examples in my blog post. Now I have to move it so I can actually see the screen again. So I gave you some examples. The first one was just check disk. It will look for errors with read only. It's not a write scan. So there it is right there. Check disk space /F space /R will kick off. It'll check files and bad sectors. Or you can just kick off a check disk /F, but check disk /F/R has 5 stages, whereas I think check disk /F has 3 stages, and when it runs the 5 stages, it just depends, and it also depends on the health of your hard drive. If your hard drive is failing, or it has bad sectors or corrupt data, which is called kind of soft, what do they call it? Soft errors or soft sectors, whatever it is. I gave you another example of running a scan on a specific hard drive. You can run a check disk on any hard disk device that has a drive letter. You can run it on a DVD. You can test it out. Throw in a DVD or a CD drive, and then your CD-ROMs or DVD or optical drive might be drive letter D. You would just type in check disk space D : /F or whatever scan you want, and it'll check it. It'll even tell you if there's errors. But obviously, since it's a burnt media, there's if it's a R, CD-R or DVD-R. If it's a CD-RW, which stands for rewritable, or a DVD-RW rewritable, I'm not sure. I've never actually tried it. I've tried it on just R's, I think. You could try it and see if it will fix either the corrupt data or the bad sectors on the rewritable, because RW stands for rewritable. I'm not sure. I don't think it can. I don't think it can access the data writable, because you generally have to use a burner and then run it through the program, and then the program has to format it, and then it marks it, and then it adds to it. I could be wrong though, but if you that's how you learn. I just don't know off the top of my head if on an RW you can use check disk to fix it, but I definitely think you could run it to look for errors. But definitely, let's say a flash drives are considered hard drives. These are considered hard drives, just like an SSD, because it's basically, it's not 100% the same technology, but to keep it simple, it's the same technology. So let's say you've got a flash drive that is starting to act weird, or when you boot off of it, it's slower than normal, or maybe this is another inclination and troubleshooting issue, is if you notice that some files work just fine. You have an Excel spreadsheet called budget, 2017 budget. That one works just fine. No, it's quick. It opens up quick. When you add to it and you save it, it just takes a second or two. When you close it, no problems. But then you've got another spreadsheet, budget 2016, that you're still working on because your boss is an asshole, or the IRS has decided to, audit you. But when you open up the 2016 budget file, Excel spreadsheet, it's really slow. Or when you go to make changes to it, it acts weird, or it hesitates. Or when you save your changes, it takes longer to save. Or when you close that spreadsheet, it takes a lot longer to close. That could be an indication that either that file itself is corrupt, which check disk could possibly be a tool to use to repair it, or the sector, the physical hard disk sector where that data is located, is failing. Now this is where this is a very, very important tool, at least for me. when I try to recover data or when I try to repair people's computers, I always try to run a check disk. That's like one of the tools that I almost always use. I mean, obviously, if I'm even recovering data, because if I notice that certain data, or just, you know what I'm saying, I will just run a check disk. So basically, on a Windows operating system, the files are written linearly, sequentially. You know, they're in order. You could also defrag, but that's a separate video. What check disk will do is, if it notices that you have either, you know, the soft bad sectors or the corrupt data, it will try to salvage that data and move it. But especially if it notices that the hard disk has bad sectors, it will mark that sector as bad so that Windows knows in the future, and it will try to move that data to a good sector if it can. It'll try to salvage as much of that data as possible. It is possible that, I'm not sure, I'm just not 100% sure what the percentage does. If 1/3 of the file is on a bad sector, is it salvageable? Is it 1/10? I just don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into that. But whatever check disk uses, whatever Microsoft uses for their algorithm or whatever is involved with this program, because it is a program, it's an executable check disk, it will try to salvage that data that is on a bad sector. Basically, keep it simple, it just moves it. It will try to move that data or that Excel spreadsheet or the pornography or whatever it is you Americans spend your time. What is the statistics? Americans watch 6 hours of television per day on average, but they complain that they don't have any time to, you know, perform maintenance on their vehicles or their computers, or they don't have time for their whatever, or they don't have time to learn new things. Whatever. Excuses are lame to me, but whatever. Whatever it is, it will try to move that file, folder, data to a good sector, and then it will mark, which that's very important, obviously, but what's even equally important is it will mark that sector as bad, so that Windows will no longer attempt to write to that physical, it's the physical hard drive. A lot of hard drives appear as they're healthy, but you don't know until you run scans on them. And that's why check disk is a good tool. You can even run it without the variables so that it will just look for errors, but I recommend you run a real scan, which I showed you as part of your computer maintenance. You want to run this. I run this. I should do it once a month, but I usually don't, because a lot of times I have to have access to my computers, and these scans can take a lot, even on a healthy hard drive, even on a dual core, quad core, and above. They can take a while because it depends on the size of your hard drive, how much data, how many files it has to scan, how many sectors it has to scan. I would set aside, seriously, a couple hours. Just make sure for a couple of hours, possibly, you don't have access to that computer, because it's a DOS program. I might make a video with my Android and concatenate it to the end of this video. I'm just not sure yet, because I have to run it through a encoder, and I fucking hate running. I don't edit videos. All of my videos are freestyle. I don't script them. I hate editing video. I hate it because it's time consuming, plus I have to run it through an encoder. But as you can see on screen, back to the command prompt, I'm going to show you how to kick off the scan for real, which I recommend you run a real check disk scan periodically, once a month or whatever you have time for. I don't think you need to run it every week or every day. Nah. Even once a month might be overkill, but definitely maybe after a power outage, or because when your file system on Windows gets dismounted incorrectly, that can damage the disk, and so it's possible that you might have data corruption after your Windows 7 machine, or Windows 10 or Windows 8 or Windows 7, or XP or Vista gets the power cut. Or maybe your child just unplug the power or you did not properly shut it down. When you want to properly shut down a Windows operating system because it dismounts the file system. The file system is always in write mode until you either pull, but you don't want to pull the, you want to gracefully shut down Windows so that the file system gets gracefully dismounted. Okay, so I'm gonna just do a check disk space. I'll just do the C because, like I said before, you can choose which hard drive or which disk, and flash drives are considered disks, or if you might have an external drive that has a drive letter. Anything with a drive letter you can scan. Actually, you could scan floppies. I used to scan floppies back in the day with Windows XP when you know, floppies were still used quite a bit to update BIOSes, or I just, you know, had a few documents. Oh yes. And same thing with flash drives, and I presume with even optical media, but I don't want to digress about that again. So then space /F space /R. So this takes 5 passes. Click enter. Now you're going to get this message. The type of the file system is NTFS, cannot lock the current drive. So this program has to lock your file system, but it must lock it in write mode. Well, your file system is already booted. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to use your Windows computer. So, and it cannot dismount it. Without Windows, I don't think there's a way to dismount. Now Linux is different, but this is not Linux. Windows, I don't think there's a way that I know of where you can dismount a write file system, writable, and then remount it writable. Now Linux you can. Let me think. Linux? Yeah, I think Linux you might be able to dismount a writable file system and then remount it at least as readable, or maybe even remount it as writable. But I know you can dismount a writable Linux file system. Okay. So you're going to get this message. Cannot lock the current drive. Check disk cannot run because the volume is in use by another process. Well, that process is the operating system. And Windows always mounts it, almost always, in write mode unless it has a problem, and then let me think. Safe mode I think is still technically write mode. I could be wrong about that. But I think maybe the only time it'll mount it is in read only, is like it will kick off a check disk. Now Windows will detect problems with your hard drive. So have you ever noticed once in a while that all of a sudden you rebooted your computer or whatever, the next time that you booted your computer you received a message, Windows has detected file system problem, would you like to run a check disk? And you say yes. But however, I've ran hundreds or however many check disk scans without Windows prompting, and I still found problems. So it's that built-in automation does not work that much, not a very high percentage according to my pattern recognitions. So then you're going to get this check disk cannot run because the volume is used by another process. Would you like to schedule this volume to be checked the next time the system restarts? You can say no, or you can say yes. I'm going to actually say yes because there was a power outage a few weeks ago, and also, yeah, basically because of that. And also I haven't ran it on this computer in a while. So I'm going to say yes. You just type Y for yes, and then you'll see this message. This volume will be checked the next time the system restarts. So you have to reboot. So you have to go to the start button and click here. And well, I am remotely connected via remote desktop connection, but on your computer, when you hit the start and you click over here, you should see a restart. So just restart it. You can shut it down too. You can select shut down and then power it back on. All it does is it adds, I think it adds a registry key. Yeah, you can actually add the registry key yourself, but that's a digression. I think all it does is it adds a registry key telling Windows, wait a minute, there's a check disk scan scheduled. Now, I might make the video, I might not. I'm not sure yet. If I do, you will see what it looks like when the computer reboots. And then what you'll see is you'll see a blank screen like this. And it will warn you. It's going to warn you. It gives you 10 seconds. If you do not press a key on your keyboard within 10 seconds, the check disk scan kicks off. If you want to cancel the scan, you have 10 seconds. And I think that goes all the way back to Windows XP. I think ever since Windows XP, Vista 7, 8, 10, check disk gives you 10 seconds to cancel. It doesn't matter what key. Just hit a key and it should cancel itself. Other than that, after 10 seconds, you'll see a screen exactly just almost the same as this. Only check disk will be in write mode. Never, 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 never. Never, 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 never. Never. I almost never bark out orders because I'm not into the military. But I'm warning you right now. Don't ever, if you can't help it, ever cancel a check disk while it's running. I'm talking about the write only mode, because it's in write mode. If the power goes out, that's a bad thing. You might, corporate environments, they have, UPS, uninterruptible power supply, but your laptop, you might want to make sure if you're running a check to scan on your laptop to make sure that your AC adapter is plugged in. But never cut the power on a Windows machine that is running check disk. Don't do it, because you could very well likely have a Windows computer that won't boot at all, because it will fuck it up, because it's in write mode. So now the scan I kicked off is the most comprehensive. It's 5 stages, but it will look just like this. There will be a stage 1, a stage 2, a stage 3, then a stage 4, a stage 5. Every stage, it spits out data. It's going to tell you the file verification completed. It will tell you how many records processed, how many bad file records processed, how many EA records processed. It even has a percentage, although I don't think the percentage is accurate, but that's famous for Microsoft. It has a percentage for all of the stages for the entire process, and it'll just keep, counting it. You can watch it. Is there an example here? We can, let's see. So these statistics will be the same on a real check disk. The way I kicked it off with the /F/R options or variables or whatever you want to call them, there will be 5 stages. Generally, the 4th and the 5th stages are the most time consuming. So don't stress out. So I've heard stories of days that a check disk took place, maybe even months. I don't know about months. I doubt months, but possibly weeks. Now that would be on a hard disk that is failing. If you have a lot of bad sectors and the hard drive is just almost ready to die because there's so many bad sectors and it's just failing, it could take a really long time. But I would say give it a few hours. Don't sweat it. Stage 4, stage 5 take a long time. And also, at the very end, if you're lucky, I don't know why you would be sitting at your computer, because you can go and watch porn on your other computer, or you can go and sign up for Ashley Madison and cheat on your spouse, or whatever it is that you Americans perpetrate on each other. Or you can go shoot each other. There was a school shooting in Washington State yesterday. Whatever it is that your extracurricular activities preclude you Americans, you can step away from your check disk scan. But it's going to spit out. You notice how this final display of data, US and journal verification completed. Now you may get errors. It may error out. That's another thing you might want to look for. Is it may error out. I think a check disk scan, when it errors out, I could be wrong, but does it try to reboot your computer? I know a successful check disk scan always reboots your computer. But at the very end, it spits out all this data. Windows has checked the file system and found no problems. On your behalf, it may say it found some problems, and it will tell you those. It'll tell you in kilobytes the total disk space, number of files, number of indexes scanned, number of bad sectors, if it finds any. It tells you how much data in kilobytes. I'm pretty sure that's bytes. The K is capital, the B is capital. I'm pretty sure that's kilobytes. Kilobytes and bad sectors. It'll tell you how many kilobytes and used by the system. So if you have a lot of files, or is that the operating system? I'm not sure. That could be the operating system. It'll tell you the log file usage, and then it will tell you how much kilobytes available on the disk. 4,096 bytes in each allocation unit. Okay, so when the check disk scan successfully completes, it'll tell you if it has errors or not. It'll flash the screen. It'll tell you if it could not. Now, I don't know if it errors out. If it fails, does it just sit there for you? It might. Once in a while on a bad hard drive, check disk scan will fail. But I would try to kick it off again. If it's successful, it will just it'll just display itself as if it's nude, or I don't know what it is. It only is displayed for like a second or two. And then it will boot into Windows. And then you'll be like, oh, well, let's see, I went to the dog park. Oh, I can log in. And hopefully that will fix your issues. It can fix all kinds of weird issues, believe it or not. Like I went over before, maybe your computer is slow. Maybe one specific file doesn't work. Maybe a program. Because, again, it does not discriminate, although there's a lot of discrimination going on in America, but nobody seems to care. Windows doesn't necessarily discriminate. Well, okay, Microsoft Office, you would think that Windows would discriminate there and be biased, but no. It could be that there are bad sectors or just corrupt. I think they call it soft sectors or soft. There could be some corruption with the data, the software on the hard drive, and CheckDisk will try to clean it up. There could also be a physical problem, which is more serious. And it'll try to fix that too, but it can't. Because it's hard, get it? It's a hardware problem. But Windows, in this sense, which is a paradox, is actually smart enough to be able to detect bad sectors, mark them as bad, so that Windows never ever tries to write data to that sector again, which is very logical. And then it will try to move that data to a good sector so that those Excel spreadsheets or whatever, even a program, where it doesn't matter, wherever that bad sector is on the hard drive, this program will try to solve that problem. Because that's fundamentally, at the end of the day, computers is almost all about problem, reaction, solution. Oh, you got a problem? Okay, we need to troubleshoot. Okay, what are the solutions? Well, here's a solution, CheckDisk. And this is to me, this is a gold tip if you properly use this tool. Because, you know what I'm saying? And it's also recommended as part of your regular computer maintenance. Why wouldn't you run this once in a while? Just to keep your operating system healthy. And also to let it scan your hard disk. And this could be a warning sign. If you notice that CheckDisk found some data in bad sectors, well, that tells you that your hard drive has bad sectors. And that could be a warning sign to back up your data. You should always back up your data. Adios. So hopefully that was productive. And you can now kick off CheckDisk on Windows 7. Again, you can check out my blog post if you prefer written instructions, because I included everything in almost everything in this video in my blog post, and I show you how to, full instructions on how to kick off a CheckDisk if you've never kicked off a CheckDisk on Windows 7. But these instructions can certainly be used for Windows XP, Vista, 8, 10. The only caveat is it might be a little bit different process on how to get to command prompt. Adios.